So this story begins Christmas 2004. I was working in South Africa for a helicopter company there, and we specialized in humanitarian work. I woke up the morning after Christmas, Boxing Day, and turned on the TV, and I saw the devastation that had been caused by the tsunami. Initially, most of the reports were focused on Sri Lanka and Thailand because they had good coverage. And I messaged my boss, "Hey, are we going to Sri Lanka?" And he messaged me back, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Turn on the TV." So he turned on the TV and we saw, and he said, "I'll come right back to you." The US State Department, they fund an organization called USAID, helping development and emergencies around the world. They quickly agreed to support our operation, and the South African government paid for a transport aircraft to take our helicopters and supplies to where they were needed. So initially we were going to Sri Lanka, but then the devastation that had occurred in Indonesia, in Sumatra, started to be covered by TV and media, and we realized that's where we should go. So we took off in a transport aircraft from South Africa, and we landed first in Maldives, and we dropped some supplies in the Seychelles, and then we eventually made it to Medan. And we did our first reconnaissance flights around the corner from Medan, Banda Aceh, Malabo, along that western coast. I have never seen anything like it, and I hope that I never see it again. The Americans were already there with a helicopter carrier doing the best they could, and we brought many more helicopters and later fixed-wing aircraft. But to fly up and down and see tens of thousands of dead bodies floating in the water, entire villages wiped out. The wave came in and would submerge a village, drowning lots of people, and then would go out, taking everything with it. In a bay, for instance, where a town had been set up, you would see the concrete floors, the squares where the houses used to be, and the wooden houses had all gone. Usually the only building left was the mosque, because it was built bricks or cement or more sturdy concrete maybe. And I've worked in war zones, I've worked in West Africa, I've seen some pretty horrible sights, but that was the most shocking thing I've ever seen. And the team of us who worked on that, we still talk about it, and it bonds us in a way nothing else ever could. I hope I never see anything. I hope that never happens again. And we spent months working there, flying doctors, nurses, water, food, people. Even one of the most vital elements was sanitation engineers, water engineers, because the seawater had polluted most of the wells that the people needed to get their water for themselves and for their animals. That became very important. And then also there were specialists who deal with dead animals, because animals were tied up or inside buildings and they would drown as well. And there were carcasses of buffalo and cow and donkeys and dogs all over the place that also needed to be dealt with. And unfortunately, some of them had gone down in the wells and polluted them. It was a lot of hard work. I remember flying along the coast one morning on our way to a station where we were taking doctors and nurses, and we see that about a kilometre section of road had now disappeared underwater because the whole geography had shifted. And it left this stretch of road that didn't go anywhere anymore. With the local people had gone out there and planted white stones saying, "Thank you, USA." And God bless you, in big white stones along the roads for us to see. You know, we were there to help them and they were thanking us. These are not things that you forget easily. Anyway, that day I landed one place, there was a small hill, and a local policeman, it turned out, didn't have a uniform because when the tsunami came he was in normal clothes. He didn't have his uniform, but he turned out to be the local policeman. And he took us to this top of this small hill, and he said, and we looked around, it was one of those devastated villages, just the mosque remaining, hills around, nothing left, everything wiped out. And he described how he was standing on this hill where his sentry point was, he'd just gone up to talk to the other police officer, and they saw all the water went down. The level just dropped. And the people were rushing out to say, oh, we can get fish, we can pick up the fish. And people were going out, and he was suspicious. He's like, this is not a good thing. This shouldn't be happening. And then they saw the tsunami wave coming in, and they were shouting, and they had a bell. They were ringing the bell, and people were so happy gathering these fish and other benefits from the tide going out that they didn't realize until too late the wave that was coming. They looked, and now they have to run. And he said he saw old people walking, and then the wave took them. And then there were people running, and the wave took them. Then there was a person on a bicycle going as fast as he could, and he saw the wave coming and coming, and the wave took him. And then a person on a small motorbike going as fast as he could, and it looked like he would get away. But he fell from the bike, and the wave got him. And the wave just kept coming and coming and coming. And he and his colleague were sitting on this small hill. I think it was about 10 or 15 meters, 20 meters maybe higher than the rest of the land. And he described how the water just kept coming and coming and coming until there was only just enough room for the two of them to stand on the top of this little hill. And they were surrounded by water. The tops of the hills were poking out, and that was it. And he's like, this is like the Bible. This is like the flood, the Old Testament. And this is it now. This is what our country is going to be like. And then they waited, and then the water started to go out. And it went lower and lower and lower until he could see the village again. And there was nothing left. It had just all been taken out. Everybody gone. He wasn't from this village, but that whole coast, several hundred kilometers, was treated exactly the same way by the tsunami. And so he knew his family was in trouble. And he told us he suspected that his 6 children, and he had 10 grandchildren at that stage, he thinks they were probably all gone. But he climbed the palm tree personally to get coconuts for us to drink. He was thinking about us. We were there to help him. And he'd had all this tragic loss, but he was there helping us. And that stuck with me, and that will always affect me. We visited that place several times, and one day he said, may I come with you into town, because I believe there's a place where people can try to find lost relatives. And I knew what he meant, because in the middle of Banda Aceh, the town, there was now a huge ship parked in the middle of the town. It had been off the coast, and it was a generator ship making electricity. And the tsunami had taken it right into the middle of the town, and it was planted in the middle of the town now. Thankfully still working and providing power for the people, because everything was wiped out. On the side of that ship, people had posted pictures and names of people they'd found, people who were missing, to try to help people bring them together and match the families back again. So we took him into town and drove him in and left him there, and wondered if he would ever find his family. About a week, 10 days later, I was passing that way again for a meeting, and I stopped, and lo and behold, he was there. He was standing there, and he was talking to some other people, and I recognized him, he recognized me, and I was terrified to ask. I was so scared to ask him, like, what happened with his family? And he said, they're all gone, except for one granddaughter. And he turned, and I hadn't noticed he had this little girl with him. This is my granddaughter. And he picked her up, and she shook hands with me and smiled at me. And he said, like, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for all the people helping here. And I must be grateful to God for this mercy, that one of my granddaughters is still alive. And maybe I have hope I might find other members of my family, but I think not. I think God is testing us. And we must have faith and be grateful and happy for what we have, what we receive. That stuck with me for life. Even in immense tragedy, it's vital to be grateful for what you have. But the courage and the gratitude of that man stayed with me to this day. Thank you for listening.